Hello, welcome to the Basketball Soapbox here on YouTube. I'm your host, Daniel Daly. You're probably thinking I usually show my face on this one, but I'm on a different location, so I'm just going to be recording, but I have some graphics. So there's that. Before I get started, I want to just give a shout out to Mr. Vincent, the Mr. Vincent podcast on Spotify. I've been on there quite a little bit lately, talking playoff basketball. But Emmanuel Vincent, who's the host of that podcast, does a great job talking about sports and amongst other things of wrestling and football. So looking to be on there a little bit more as well. Especially having him on my podcast as well because he's very knowledgeable and does his due diligence on the games and stuff we're both interested in. So, of course, check that out. Of course, the Mr. Vincent podcast on Spotify and other listening platforms. But let's get into this episode here. Episode 46. I'm going to be making my semifinal picks of the second round of the NBA playoffs, which we have had a little bit more progression in. So we already know there's some games tonight. Of course, I'm filming this before the Celtics and Philly game and before the game 2 of Nuggets and Suns. But also, I want to touch base on the playoff MVPs so far. There's been a couple of performances that have been otherworldly and guys that have been playing really well. So I want to get into that as well. But let's start off with my playoff predictions. And the first one, we have the Denver Nuggets versus the Phoenix Suns. The Nuggets are currently up 1-0 before game 2. I'm recording this. But I picked the Denver Nuggets in 6 in this series just because I believe they have a little bit more depth. They kind of know who they are a little bit. They've been together for a couple of years and have a couple of more guys that they can rely on to bring in there. So, and the ability to get stops. They have guys that have defensive abilities in terms of KCP, Bruce Brown, Aaron Gordon. They brought some guys in, and I thought those were the things that they needed to bring in to kind of bring their team a little bit better together. You know, Jamal Murray's a good-sized guard, and he defends well, but next to him, you have Michael Porter Jr., you have Nikola Jokic. You need some guys who can kind of fill those gaps on the floor, especially defensively, and I feel like those three guys – especially Aaron Gordon next to Joker. I feel like that improved their team tremendously. But KCP and Bruce Brown, the ability to knock down shots and be disruptors and just bring that energy. But a lot of guys off the bench, like Jeff Green, still in old age. Chris Brown as well, Bruce Brown, all these guys that they're able to at least plug and play and bring in, I think can play big dividends in this matchup. And we saw in game 1 that happened as I did a recap the other night. Check out that episode as well. But I just feel like Phoenix Suns really don't have no answers for on the defensive side of the ball. And in terms of depth, who they turn to in those pivotal moments where guys need rest, Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, for them to even have a chance, are going to have to play a high minutes load in this series. And when you look at the term of Chris Paul at this stage in his career, being that old at 39 years old, 38, 39 years old, you're asking too much for him to navigate this guard-driven league where every offense is basically ran through the guard spot to cover in transition, defend at a high level, fight through all these picks. He's going to try to do that because that's who Chris Paul is, but it's just a little too much going after Murray in this series. And I just feel like, especially when those guys need rest on the Phoenix Suns, I just don't think it's going to be there. Of course, you have the two-time reigning MVP, Nikola Jokic as well. I think he's going to win that matchup against Ayton, and they desperately need Ayton to play up to par, right? Like DeAndre Ayton is going to have to at least play on par with Joker as well and be dominant on the boards, which he wasn't in game 1, which is going to be difficult. I feel like I'm looking around and it doesn't look like there's a whole team here for Phoenix. It doesn't look like there's a lot of depth, and I feel like that's going to be the ultimate difference, especially with the high minutes total that Devin Booker and Kevin Durant played in the first series with the Clippers there, even without Paul George and without Kawhi Leonard the last couple of games. I feel like that's going to play a factor here too, where they really don't have anybody else to rely on. The only chance that they would have, especially, again, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, is going to have to play the whole series and really double down on their offense. They're going to have to find some type of offense there ultimately for this team. And it's just like, I do not know if they can do that consistently, even though they are a high offensive power team, but defensively, they're not going to be able to get stops. And offensively, who else are they going to rely on to help them out if it's not DeAndre Ayton, who they don't feature a lot, who was 7-11 for the first game, and just, I don't know how that turns around for them. So for that one, I have the Denver Nuggets in 6. Moving on to my second series here. I have the Miami Heat for going up against the New York Knicks. Of course, Miami took game one last night. In a 90s throwback series that's going to be gangbusters, going to be very physical, be intense. But I'm going to go with Miami Heat in 7. Not 7, 6. My bad, 6. Am I even on? Yeah, I'm going to go with Miami Heat in 6 there. Just because I just think Miami's going to be able to catch them, right? And Miami can, at least for the most part during this playoffs, have been able to shoot the ball a little bit better than their counterparts going up against Milwaukee and then the New York Knicks right now. I think they're going to be able to shoot a little bit better than the New York Knicks, even though the New York Knicks do have versatile guards out there that they can rely on: Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart, Emmanuel Quickly, RJ Barrett. But I just feel like Miami kind of knows what they are. And then they get into those situations and they actually know the moment, right? They have the experience there, even though without Tyler Hero for the most part and Victor Oladipo, they have guys that were in the Eastern Conference Finals last year, like Max Strus and Gabe Vincent, Kevin Love, who has been in NBA Finals. So this team of the Miami Heat kind of know how to win, right? Like they know how. We know what they are. We know they're a proven commodity. Whereas the New York Knicks haven't really. They had their way in the first round, of course, upsetting the Cleveland Cavaliers, which I was completely wrong about. Yeah, just completely wrong about the New York Knicks. Really shocked them. And of course, being already down 1-0 without Randall, where I thought that Randall could create a little bit more of havoc, a little bit more offensive balance there for the New York Knicks there and give them a different dynamic and kind of get some of those Miami guys in trouble and get to that bench where it's a little thinner right now. I just think Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo know what they are. They've been there before, even Kevin Love. I feel like the experience factor on that end could derail the Knicks in this one here, and especially with the way Jimmy Butler, who's playing fantastic, who I'll talk about in a little bit, is playing fantastic. And you're getting production from Kyle Lowry, Duncan Robinson, Gabe Vincent, who came out and shot the ball really well for them in the first game there. So there's just a couple. I know what the Miami Heat are, right? Especially being a Celtics fan, facing them in the Eastern Conference Finals. You think about Heat culture from Pat Riley to Eric Spoelstra, and then you get to Jimmy Butler. That's really tough. And especially, again, respect to the Knicks, of course, with Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle, and Tibbs. We know they're not going to go down easy, but I think Miami can, especially stealing game one last night, stealing the first game of the series like they did in Milwaukee, is going to be interesting to see if the Knicks can answer back. I think they need to be a little bit more physical, play up that part a little bit more. But I think the Miami Heat can get that in 6 with Jimmy Butler. And to get that performance from Kyle Lowry in game one has also been impressive, right? Like Kyle Lowry, who has been dormant all season, to come in that moment and play against the Knicks and kind of show a little bit of the Kyle Lowry that we've seen in Toronto a little bit later in his career there in Toronto. The ability to step up and hit certain shots and be able to dictate. The ability to do that late in that game was fantastic for them in game one. I think they'll be able to continue that. And Bam Adebayo continue to battle Mitchell Robinson. And to do that is just, I think that's going to be a vital part there. Yes, I have the Heat in 6 in that one. Moving on to a series that, as a Celtics fan, I can't wait to watch, especially soon. I just finished talking about this on the Mr. Vincent podcast where we broke down the series overall. Of course, we also broke that Woj reported Joel Embiid will be out game one, which bodes well for my Celtics. And with that being said, I think I got the Celtics in 5 or 6 in the series, most likely 5, especially if Joel is hobbled. I just don't think Philadelphia has a lot of answers for the Boston Celtics. I really just don't think they do. When you look at the Boston Celtics, you're looking at Marcus Smart, Derek White, Malcolm Brogdon, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Al Horford, Robert Williams, Grant Williams, even to a certain extent. And you go to these guys that you know have performed on that level and have been a part of that and have been in those battles, especially last year, in building over the course of the year, and then especially bringing in Malcolm Brogdon this year and the addition that he is, reigning 6th man of the year. And then you look at Philadelphia, who, without Joel Embiid right now, you look at James Harden, who has been wishy-washy in the playoffs at best, has not been able to step up. He's been to a couple Western Conference Finals. but the inability to really, at this stage, take over games. Of course, we get a couple hints in vintage James Harden there. We get a little bit of this and that, a little bit there. But when you look overall in this series, does he have an advantage at his spot? He's going to have to go up against Marcus Smart. He's going to have to go up against Derek White. He's going to have to go against Malcolm Brogdon. On switches, he's going to get Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. And then if he switches over to Al Horford's at least a little bit savvy enough to hold him a little bit. And that might be his best advantage, kind of how we've seen Trae Young do Al Horford in the first series there against Boston. But I just don't think there's going to be enough of those opportunities, especially without Joel Embiid coming in and providing that help factor. I just don't see them, especially on the offensive end. And as I rattled all those guys off for the Boston Celtics, you move on to the Philadelphia 76ers side of things. And you start looking around, and then it's like, oh, James Harden, Tyrese Maxey, who has been a bright spot for them. Now you're relying on guys like Tobias Harris, George Niang, Shake Middleton, Paul Reed, guys of that nature. And it's like, are those guys reliable enough to help you in this series long term? Even if it goes 5, 6, 7, are those guys going to be able to build confidence? And especially Joel Embiid on a bad wheel whenever he does return. Is that going to be enough for Philadelphia right now to be in the driver's seat to win a championship or to get past the Boston Celtics for that matter? And when you're looking at it from that standpoint, it's like, no. Boston has had their number. Yes, Joel Embiid has had 52 against us, against the Boston Celtics. It's like, okay, that's one game. Is he going to consistently do that now on a bad wheel, a bad right knee, that a brace that he's saying that he's playing on? So it's very difficult right there to see any pathway for Philadelphia looking at their roster, which is weird because they were one of the better teams during the regular season and stumbled a little bit. And you think about, is James Harden going to be able to have that vintage performance? And it's just like right now at this certain moment, playing against the Boston Celtics team, who I believe got a wake-up call against the Atlanta Hawks, are they going to be able to go into those deep waters and battle this team, the Celtics? And I just don't think so. I think they might be able to get a game at best when Embiid comes back, maybe game 3 or 4. Maybe they're able to stave off a sweep. But I really just don't see them beating the Boston Celtics. I just don't see it. And that's just a tough ask for them. That's a tough ask for that Philadelphia 70 team without hold on 1 second. It's just tough. It's just a tough ask for that team to go in there and then be like, hey, we got to win one without our best player, without our MVP on the season, and try to overcome this Boston Celtics team, who is one of the better teams in the league, who has been a top team in the league so far. And that is really tough. I just don't see it for that standpoint. And I got the Celtics in 5 or 6, mainly leading to 5. I want to say 5. Celtics in 5. They get back to Boston once. I think Philly can get a game. Moving on here, we got the Golden State Warriors versus the Los Angeles Lakers. Of course, the Golden State Warriors dispatching the Sacramento Kings in a valiant effort. And, of course, we got the Los Angeles Lakers, who have taken over got a little problem there. Who have taken over the – I didn't need to scroll that. Let me start again. Sorry about that. We got the Golden State Warriors versus the Los Angeles Lakers. 6-7 matchup, which you really don't see in the NBA. But we have these two teams here. The Sacramento Kings went down to the Golden State Warriors in 7. It took a 50-point performance from Steph Curry in Game 7 to finish that one there. And Golden State really just riding the momentum off of that. And, of course, we have the Los Angeles Lakers, who dispatched of the Memphis Grizzlies in 6 games, which was unfortunate, especially as I wanted the Lakers to lose. But you got to give the Lakers credit. They took control of that series, and they put a 40-piece on the Memphis Grizzlies on their way out. Now, this one is a real tough series, right? Like, you got contrasting styles, whereas Golden State can go small, And you have the depth of the Lakers and the size of the Lakers, which they can play big and provide a couple more rim protection than the Sacramento Kings were. So it's definitely difficult to decide in this series. And of course, you got LeBron James and Steph Curry, two legendary players of this magnitude, and this is in the second round. I really can't think of a playoff matchup of this magnitude, of this much history on the line, probably since the 90s, of those old aging players that we saw in the 90s and that type of era. This is probably it for this era, right? Like, you got LeBron James, Steph Curry, both from Ohio, have been intertwined, right, with each other for the past half decade, right? Who's the best player? Of course, the NBA Finals matchup where Curry had the advantage in those situations, where he won 3-1 in those situations, and now we get this round here. And then even in the play-in matchup a couple years ago, you had LeBron James and Steph Curry, the Lakers. I believe it was LeBron's second season there, in the play-in against the Golden State Warriors, and LeBron took that one. And then, especially at that time, with everything in the state of flux of Golden State, Klay Thompson being out, Draymond Green being out, you really thought that might have been the last iteration of the Golden State Warriors. They were able to extend their run even more. They flipped it on its head, battled back, won a championship last year, Steph Curry Finals MVP, and they're back again. The Lakers won the championship in 2021. So, the 2020 season, sorry. The NBA bubble season, 2020 season. And now we're back again. Two recent champions. Two teams that look drastically different than last year and the previous years that they were competing. The Lakers making a bunch of changes there. And I was on the Mr. Vincent podcast kind of stumped about this one, because it seems like the Lakers have the depth, right? And kind of it's like the opposite of the Suns-Nuggets series, right? Where they have the depth, they have the size. And then you look at the Warriors, who have the pedigree, who have Steph Curry playing at a high level, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, Kevon Looney. It's a little bit different, right, with both these matchups, right? And you look at Los Angeles with LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Jared Vanderbilt, Austin Reeves, Dennis Schroeder, D'Angelo Russell. You're going down the line here, and it's like they have a little bit more depth, a little bit more guys they can play. They've been great on the defensive end. And even with that, I'm probably going to go with the Golden State Warriors, right? Because I think their pedigree, at least in those certain times, have proven right? And it's kind of difficult to pick against LeBron James in a 7-game series. But there's been one guy who has been better during that time frame in playoff series. I believe LeBron James, I said, is at 71% in playoff series. Steph Curry is at 85%. I believe Stephen A. broke that down today on First Take. But looking at Steph Curry and what he's been able to do, looking at this Golden State Warriors team, the ability just to find a way to do whatever it needs to do done is remarkable, right? Like, everything was going bad in that series last series. They were down 2-0. They had to battle back. They took the 3-2 lead. They lost in Oracle in Game 6, and they found a way to take that series, right? And rip the hearts out of Sacramento, especially Steph Curry ripping the heart out of Sacramento. And then when you really look at the advantages that the Golden State Warriors have in terms of playing small, right? In terms of playing small ball, they can be out there with Looney and surrounded by shooters. They can be out there with Draymond and figure that point out. And I feel like Memphis at times couldn't go small, and whatever their small lineup wasn't as effective as we've seen the Golden State Warriors be, right? And you got Steph Curry playing at a high level. LeBron James got some rest, and he knows Steph Curry is coming. This is going to be a battle, I believe, of different playing styles. And even though I have the Warriors in 7, I don't feel comfortable with that because of the depth of the Lakers. But LeBron James playing long series isn't probably the best for him right now. Anthony Davis can go out at any point in time, even if it's for a game or for the last 15 minutes of a game. He can get hurt at any time. Even though I have the Warriors in 7, I don't feel comfortable saying that. But because I feel like Anthony Davis at some point is going to have to be the X factor for the Lakers. And if there's any series that he needs to be the X factor, it's this series right here, where he can have an advantage. If he gets Kevon Looney in foul trouble, he's going to be battling Draymond Green. I don't even know who the backup big is for the Golden State Warriors, if they have one. So when you're looking at it from that perspective, I think the Warriors can make enough shots and get enough stops at some points to overpower the Lakers. And I got them in 7 in that series. It's going to be interesting to see how that goes down in the second round here. And then we get to the conference finals. Of course, I'll be talking basketball as well. But the second round is going to be interesting. For the first time in NBA history, every seed is represented in the second round. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all in the second round for the first time in NBA history. Shows to how crazy this season has been with injuries and teams playing outside themselves and figuring out. But look at all the star power that we have there. We got LeBron, we got Steph, we got Joker, we got Durant, we got Jimmy Butler, Jalen Brunson, James Harden for the most part, Joel Embiid when he returns, Jaylen Brown, and Jason Tatum. So you got a lot of star power here, and I can't wait to see it, of course, starting tonight. And we'll talk about that.